father incapable of having more children. Ham did this because he told his brothers, look, had two sons, and one killed the other. Now that the other one shouldn't have too much of the world. Our father's got three sons. If he's going to have more, three, how much more will have an opportunity to kill each other? By now you should know. Tells you. You mention the fact you want to say the father first. Told us literally. Here we're trying to say is the true offspring of good deeds. I seem to. What is in fact the tolos of Noach? The Noach walked with God. Actually, if you look in the Onkelos, so that Hashem, in the fear of the Lord, walked. In other words, as I mentioned to you before, in the Gemara and Shabbos, you will ask certain questions by the Rabbi Shalom. But all of this depends on whether or not you have the proper respect for God. Because that is the underlying foundation for a righteous type. That you must have the proper respect for God. Because if you're not motivated to serve God, or with the proper respect, all your service is very shallow indeed. It's not a proper service. You understand? First we mentioned the concept of these are the pillars of God, so you would imagine if you would mention his children. We mentioned last time they Noach at this point, dead animal. But all the other commandments were operative. They were supposed to worship God, they were not supposed to worship idols, they were not supposed to blaspheme God. This is a very thing. There is two opinions on the subject.
The rest of the world, yes.
What's your question?
I told the rest of the
Actually, with anybody other than your wife. Wait, are you asking a question? What's your question?
What is the original command?
You're not permitted to live with somebody else's wife. You were permitted to marry your sister. It has changed. Later on, when there were more people.
He's the head of the office when he was the last.
If you're going to quote a Pasuk, first say the chapter, you mean you have nothing, no questions about anything on chapter 6? 7, what's your Pasuk? What's your question?
Chapter, verse 14.
Verse 14 and chapter 7. All right, let's see what we got here.
The translation in English says, and every fowl after its every bird, whatever hath wings. Is there a bird that does wings?
This is what it says here. The Torah before. He mentions the word kol tzipor, all birds. It's talking about birds. Birds that are permissible to be eaten. And konof, that's one shot, one explanation. And also another explanation is, it brings the Yerushalmi, that any type of...
Noah took 7 birds of kosher birds, does he?
No, it doesn't.
What did he take? Animals, I know he took 7 of. But what about the birds?
What he took of the learned out from the fact that God had a bigger quantity of these type of animals other than others, he figured it out. Maybe over. This is the sign of a person that's learned and to deduce one thing from the other things, more this type of animal to the ark. After he saves us, I have to offer a sacrifice to him. We have a mama fish, in fact, did not die. The fish did not die, and as a matter of fact, I have a very interesting on that concept. Now, if you wish, I will read it to you now, since you brought it out. We have something like this. It says like this. It says like this. Posik Perik Zayin, Posik of Bay. That's the 7th chapter, the 22nd verse. Anyone that had the spirit of life trouble, everything was on the dry land, Mesu died. It was not decreed against the fish of the sea. The answer is very simple. Everything in the world was perverted. Everything was living with its different types of species. Everything was perverted except the animals that came into the ark, Noah and his immediate family. And that's what the Torah says. Now this is what he says here. The reason is this. Well, it says, I'll read it as though it's written in English. Yeah, listen. I'll read it though it's written in English. It is there because God destroyed all the flesh that was way on the earth, and doesn't say anything about what was on the water. And truthfully, why is this that he separates the fish from everything else? And you say that the fish, and the Medrash tells us that the fish did not go and live with their different species. They were. I'm not discussing how could they. I'm just telling
The man perverted them.
All right.
They didn't do it of their own volition.
Their ways were not perverted, so therefore the decree that they should be destroyed by the flood was not thing. And the Radak, now the Torah questions the Radak is a major commentary, or somebody to argue with a major commentary. If you have to be a Goen in your own, just can't go and argue with that. You got to be a genius of rank to argue with great commentary. The Radak writes that the fish of the sea, that's the Torah that he was quoting, was reason though they didn't die because they lived in the water and that. And the Torah says this is no good reason. There it is. Ain't near a cloud. It's not, doesn't appear, there's no good reason or there's nothing even hold. Because if God wished that they should die, they would also die. And the proof of that is in Egypt. Also the fish died. God wanted the fish to die, they die. If he doesn't want to die, don't die. So, also, it says that it wasn't decreed that they should die. It teaches us that, in fact, they lived only because of the supervision of God. In other words, a miracle occurred that they lived. Now, you'll ask the question, why do you need an extra miracle for fish to live in the water? They lived there all the time. Because it says they would not have been alive otherwise by natural ways, because there was a great phenomenon that occurred at the time of the flood that many people are not aware of. Is this, that if you look there, it says that at the time of the flood, the waters of the flood were boiling water. So ordinarily, fish in boiling waters could not live. That's right. And so therefore, when we explain that they lived because of the supervision of God, in fact, God provided a miracle that they should not die, even though the waters, in fact, were boiling. Life, not death. One of the characteristics that keeps alive. Mitzrayim made a mistake.
They're making plans because they know.
Whatever it is, you have to learn the hard way. Anyway, the fact is that they knew that God had made a decree that he wouldn't destroy the world by flood. But although God made a decree he wouldn't destroy the world by flood, it did not mean to imply that he would not necessarily destroy one nation by flood. I know, but people should die. All right. All right, any further questions?
It winds up to tell you that a whole transpired from the time that the rain started. So how come in the next sentence it says, and in the second month, the earth dried? On 7 weeks.
Yes. When the first thing is that it had a surface appearance of dryness, but it really wasn't dry. You had to wait until it in fact became.
So therefore, then it was more than a year, the effect of the.
And exactly at that point, it became a year, a solar year. That's why I say to you, it is more than a lunar year, but it is exactly a solar. The judgment of the process of punishment. It is a very long time. God had to provide with several miracles to occur. That in fact, the grain and everything, the food that they had taken on board, would not spoil in all that time. And so that was also a miracle from God, because they didn't have refrigeration. They had 120 years to prepare. I mean, it was not like this. You had to do it in 5 days. Anybody that pays you.
Well, there's a lesson here which I don't get the main drift of it. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. That's a part of the pasuk. So why should God make that statement? And what does it mean? What's the significance of it? That for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. meaning that man has a desire or thinks to do wrong, to do evil, especially when he's young in years.
This is not, the Torah alludes to something of this nature, but the more, the second, obviously, Rabbi, to move. When he's moving, going out from the womb of his mother, at that point, the Yetzer Hara is put in. So watch he's putting it. It's different Maimorim. There's also in other places, it's found there also in Yerushalmi, in Brachos, the same thing, Perik Gimel, Halacha Hey. That's called that, Yerushalmi, but also...
Do we learn, now, the next chapter, the first sentence, it says,
Chapter 9.
9, first sentence.
All right.
And God blessed Noach and his sons, and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Notice, previous to this is saying Noah and his wife. It says his sons and their wives, they left the ark together, they were together. Here it doesn't say the wives. So I'm assuming that this pasuk is the basis for the idea that man must not practice birth control, but women may, because it says the duty is upon the man to be fruitful and...
Actually, the mocker for that pasuk comes in the earlier pasuk, Parshas Bereshis. Keep conquering. That's it.
They were given the rule to who? The women, it doesn't mention the women in this.
I appreciate that. The fact
Be fruitful.
earlier.
Multiply to me, but I'm not otherwise.
What's the problem?
You can't multiply 1 times 1 is 1, but 2 times 2 is 4. So according to 4 children minimum. Whereas some say 1 and 2. If you have a male and a female,
Go for one to table, one male, one female.